It's Wizards versus Lesbians, a podcast for your ears. Hello, and welcome to Wizards versus Lesbians. My name is Isaac.
I'm Alexis.
And today we are discussing Ex-Wives of Dracula by Georgette Kaplan.
Yep.
Alexis, would you like to do the plot, or shall I?
I'll try. So Mindy is your typical pre-makeover high school movie nerd. And, straight A student, etc. She's got a crush on the English teacher / football coach, Coach Bakula, as well as on Lucia, the absolutely hottest cheerleader in their entire small Texas town. And then a party at Coach Bakula's vacation home goes awry, and suddenly Lucia starts getting really pale, and people start turning up with their throats torn out. And meanwhile, Mindy is mostly concerned about when Lucia keeps, kissing me and then saying she's not a dyke. What does she mean by that?
Yes, and if you can't guess what happens with Coach Bakula, then you haven't been paying attention. Although there is a character named, what's he named?
Is this Seb?
Lucard.
Oh, Lucard, yes.
Lucard. So, you have a couple of options. But yeah, no, I would say that covers it. I think that saying that she's a movie high school nerd who just has to take her glasses off to become hot is pretty much getting the tone here. This is set in the small Texas town of Carfax, which I joked initially was named after the website, and in fact turns out was named after the website.
Yes.
This book kept doing the thing where I made a joke, and then it turns out that it was in on the joke later, which I appreciate. Yes, the year is 2016, but the cultural references and particularly the high school movie beats date this circa John Hughes.
Well, sort of. The cultural references are kind of all over the place. It's John Hughes, but it's also got it's also got those like aughts teen movie things.
Yeah, it's sort of set in every teen movie timeline at once, sort of post late 80s, I would say. But it is absolutely crammed to the gills with references to brands and products that mean that it is approximately the mid-2010s. Mm-hmm. Are there wizards in this book?
I mean, there's a vampire. There's Dracula. That counts.
Yeah, Dracula's in this book. That's not really a spoiler. It's in the title.
Right.
And lesbians?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Mindy, who is named Mindy in 2016, has decided that she is in fact a lesbian by the time that we get to the end of the book, and yes, they are definitely in conflict.
Yes.
Why should you read this book?
Well, there was never a point when I was reading this book where I was bored.
That is for sure. Yeah, no, I would say that this is destined to be one of our special little guys.
Yes, this is absolutely one of our special little guys. This comes from Ilva Publishing, which there's two gay small presses where most of the slightly trashy, often bonkers books that I've found, that I've come across come from, and it's Bold Strokes and Ilva, which is this one. There's something I think about being a small press that allows you to just do whatever you want, so long as you think you can, make the P&L work out.
Yeah. You're going to have to explain what that means to me, though.
The profit and loss statement, which is the entirely imaginary numbers that we do to justify whether or not we can publish a book. I cannot stress to you how much they are made up. You can read about the big publishing merger trial of like a couple years ago, and one of the things that keeps coming up is that the P&Ls are entirely imaginary, but we still have to do them.
We find that this is a common trait among many industries, that there is one document that rules them all, or one statistic, and it turns out that it means absolutely nothing. This is true of freight railroading as well as it is of publishing, which is
Well, and part of it's with publishing, you just never know what's going to succeed and what's going to completely flop.
This is true. You never know.
But with a small press, a lot of what you're banking on is how enthusiastic. You can know your audience a lot better because they're smaller. You know exactly who you can market to, and you can. So a lot of it is just going to hinge on how active a marketer is the author, and is your target audience going to like it. So within the confines of what your small press does, you can really lean in and do whatever you think is fun.
Yes, and I think that there is definitely a group of people who are going to absolutely love this book.
Yes.
I think that to drill down a little further, you said trashy. I think that's true. I would say campy. We might even get into a discussion of what camp means over the course of this podcast. Hey, we forgot to talk about camp. You'll have to ask Susan Sontag about that, about the sincerity that dwells within its beating heart. Under all the irony, Alexa's favorite camp thing is the movie But I'm a Cheerleader, which we also forgot to mention, even though it's really relevant to this episode. We're just batting 1,000.
I will note that this is, trashy affectionate.
Yes. No, it's trashy on purpose. And in fact, it is trashy the way that our cheerleader Lucia is trashy.
Yes.
Where it becomes clear that the fact that she is like vapid and dumb and drops like some jokes that will make our more sensitive readers very uncomfortable over the course of this book is all part of her characterization rather than an accident.
Yes.
Why does that cover why you should read it? It's a lot of fun. And
it's fun, and you will not be bored.
You will not be bored, and like it is extremely clunkily written, maybe up till about a third of the way in, when it suddenly isn't anymore, which is very odd.
I almost wondered if it's deliberately so. We can talk about that as well.
This is a book that kept me like whipsawing back and forth about what was on purpose and what wasn't.
Yeah.
But the author's dead, so I'm all for making this is all on purpose, and they're trapped in some sort of horrific teen movie dimension.
Yes.
Thing, but later on, why shouldn't you read this book?
Well, there's a lot of stuff in it that if you're not in the right mood, I could see this book being very annoying.
Mm-hmm.
It is very campy, and there's the things that the teenagers say are less offensive than probably an actual 2016 small town in the middle of nowhere in the South would be. There's still, there's a lot of stuff that is not exactly going to fly.
Yes. It's there. Much of this book is, how to say, in poor taste.
Yes.
Which again is on purpose.
Yes.
I think that like if you are allergic to that kind of tone, the teen movie tone, you might find this just a complete non-starter.
Yeah.
But I encourage you to delve into it a little bit more, because there's some really beautiful scenes and moments later on in the book, which sort of pop up and hit you by surprise. At least that was how it felt to me.
Yeah. And again, you won't be bored.
Yeah, no. There's stuff happening at all
always on like multiple levels.
Exhaustively discussed and described stuff in some yes. cases. She went from the front porch to her car, and then she went from her car back to the porch, and then she went around the side of the house to look for a hose, and then she found the hose, and then she came back to the front of the house with the hose, and then she adjusted the nozzle of the hose, and then she
content warnings. Well, there's a whole lot of violence. There's a fair amount of sexual violence off screen, but that is, very much acknowledged. Plus, the vampirism is very clearly a metaphor for sex, and
yes.
thus there's a lot of metaphorical but only slightly sexual assault. There's blood everywhere.
Yep.
And some language which I hate to be like it's un-PC, but like some language that is might make you wince, and
gay jokes, race jokes, sex jokes.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Valhalla in that way, but more so.
Yeah. And it's honestly, it felt a little bit like being a teenager in the 90s.
Yeah, I mean, which is, I should say, the only time that we were teenagers. So a book about teenagers that feels like they're actually teenagers will feel like we're in the 90s.
Right,
but she's
exactly.
also driving the same kind of car that we would have been driving in the 90s, and there's a lot of the same kind of
Not that either of us
stuff.
had driver's licenses.
Not that either of us drove when we were in high school, but yeah. But, a lot of the details felt so familiar that it was like, surely the teens weren't still doing this 20 years later, so...
But maybe they are.
Maybe they are. I don't know. I'm not a teenager, and the teenagers who I talk to are weirdos. So,
right. Of course, and also, we were teenagers in big cities, and
this is true.
Experience of being a teenager in a fairly isolated small town.
Yes. So that is. I think that pretty much covers it. There's like dubious consent stuff even between our heroes.
Yes.
And God.
Violence to animals.
Yeah. Violence to animals. So I think that's about right.
Yeah.
Shall we get on with talking about the book then?
Let's dive into this.
Spoiler zone. All right. Gosh, this was a trip.
Right? This was a ride.
Because like I went from making fun of it to like I went from laughing at to laughing with over the course of reading this book, which I don't know if it's because I'm a snob or what, but it got me. It won me over. So,
Yeah, well, I think part of it is that, it's going for a specific tone, and it nails that tone perfectly. And so initially, and if that's done unconsciously, then you expect that the book is not necessarily going to be very smart, which again could be because you're a snob, but
could be.
But it becomes increasingly clear that there is some like actual construction and planning going on here.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of really fun structural stuff, and it's like one of the things that's cool about it is that it's like it's never subtle, of course. Like,
No.
That's not the point of what's going on here, but like I think it's really effective the way it sort of whips your expectations back and forth, and is like by the end of like chapter 4 or something, you're like, where are the vampires? Where are the vampires? Bring on the vampires.
Right.
And,
it's like,
it keeps faking bringing on the vampires and then pulling away and then faking it. And
yeah,
it's really effective. It really keeps you engaged.
Right. Because even while you're like, where are the vampires? Where are the vampires? And looking for the vampires and wondering when on earth, the fact that he is Coach Bakula is going to
pay off.
Is going to pay off.
Right.
But during that time, you get to be invested in Mindy and Lucia's, Mina and Lucy's, extremely complicated emotional drama.
Yes, burgeoning relationship in the face of Lucy's mandatory heterosexuality, which is really great, because like you're not entirely sure how. Because obviously, like all the references to Bram Stoker's Dracula are present.
Yes.
But you're never entirely sure how they're going to actually express themselves. And I will say that a book this chaotic is great because I had no idea where it was going most of the time, even though it was based on, a pre-existing novel, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, and because it is. I'm not going to say. Well, one of the things that it does that's really interesting is that it keeps kind of shifting. This is very much invoking movies. Reading this is a lot like experiencing a movie, but reading. And which I enjoy more than watching a movie, honestly. And
true.
It keeps shifting genres, right? Because first it's this sort of low budget teen lesbian, coming of age thing, and then it shifts into being like genuine horror. Like the scene on the boat is actually pretty good horror.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Like that is well written, and genuinely tense. And then it becomes sort of a comedy-ish, and then it becomes like an action movie.
Yeah, it in terms of tone, it evoked like again 90s, but or early 2000s, but movies like Jennifer's Body or I was thinking of Death Becomes Her, which is not as relevant to the subject as Pieces of Jennifer's Body. Man, I enjoyed this song, I just like whole. Man, I enjoyed this song, I just like whole. Yes, thank you. But anyway, so explicitly rather than implicitly, the horror is the horror of being a woman in a patriarchal society.
Yes, this is very much that the horror, the horror is about being a teenage girl, any kind of woman, but particularly a teenage girl.
And it walks an interesting line there because, like, I mean, you don't understand this at first because you see Lucia through Mindy's eyes, and Mindy loves and is jealous of Lucia. Like, this book points out correctly the, I want to have sex with her or I want to be her dichotomy that is at the bottom of a lot of queer attraction.
And also at the bottom of a lot of, delaying a lot of comings out.
Yes, exactly. But, as the book progresses, like, and it's really good because it keeps dropping hints, and like, it's all there, but you only notice it, or at least I only notice it when Lucia notices it, or when Mindy notices it, that Mindy's life is actually a million times better than Lucia's life, despite the fact that Lucia is the queen bee of the high school.
Oh, yeah. No, I picked up on that a little bit earlier, just in that she always seemed to be taking care of her brothers.
Right, which I failed to notice because I wasn't giving the book enough credit during the first part of it. But yeah, no, Lucia is like, comes from a broken home. Her mom and dad are both addicts. She basically has to raise their kids. And what we see of her being like, head cheerleader, and like queen of the school is just like, this is absolutely what she has to do to survive. And
so it's this incredibly carefully crafted persona.
Right. And like, one of the first things we hear her say is, "This is Quentin, my boyfriend, who I love.
Yes.
He's not so bad."
Yes.
Which I was like,
right.
And I was like, people talk this way? And in fact, no, the point was to lay the groundwork for,
yes,
this is how I survive in this world that I live in, and like, and then you balance it against the fact that Lucia is actually kind of an awful human being.
Right.
Both of these things are true at once.
Yes, she is both. She is sympathetic for the work that she has to put into surviving and putting up this, careful facade. She gets her little monologue about, well, it turns out if you cultivate the right kind of vintage aesthetic and blah blah blah, people don't notice that you're buying from a thrift store. But at the same time, she really leans into being, head cheerleader. From a teen movie where the head cheerleader is the villain, which Mindy observes fairly early on.
Yeah.
And that means that she's just awful.
Yeah, no. Just thoughtless and says the horrible things that are supposed to be funny. And
well, and I mean, and it's clear that this is also, I'm not sure how much of it is thoughtless. I think a lot of it is that she's, she cannot make up her mind about what she wants to do about Mindy. Right. First it's, okay, I want to win this girl over so that I can have a threesome with my boyfriend. And then, she breaks up with her boyfriend, and then she's like, well, this is the only person, this is a person who still seems to really care about me, so I'm going to just sort of cling to her.
Right.
And, but then it's increasingly clear to her that Mindy has a crush on her and that, clearly there's some mutual attraction. So she's doing this thing where she will say whatever it is that she needs to say to get to hold Mindy's attention. And so that means, reeling her in and then pushing her away, and then reeling her in and then pushing her away. Because if she reels her in too much, then they have to have a talk about emotions, and that's going to, as we see, that breaks their friendship several times, because Mindy keeps forcing the conversation, and that breaks their friendship, and then, they make up. But she also has to be, so that's why she has to keep pushing her away by saying mean things. I don't think she's being thoughtless. I think she's being really deliberate about it.
Yeah, I suppose that is true. Coming off as thoughtless, being content with coming off, well, really projecting this image of as a person who, absolutely doesn't care about anybody's feelings, basically.
Right.
And for whom even the public breakup with her boyfriend is, positioning herself in being a kind of theater,
Yeah.
Which also one of my favorite things about this book is that things that seem incredibly stupid at first blush turn out to be useful later. When Quentin was like, it was just a little suck action.
Right.
I was like, oh yeah, teenagers are all the time saying this. This is a phrase that is completely normal for a human being to say.
Right.
And then I go, oh, it's a vampire joke when it comes back later on.
Right.
I was like,
yes.
Oh, I should have known this,
Yes.
And the book is full of these little, things that seem really jarring at first, but then kind of, come back as sneaky or less sneaky little jokes.
The suck action is not a sneaky little joke. It's it gets
no, that is not one of the sneaky
right.
ones. One of the sneaky ones is, for example, Coach Bakula being like, "Yep, I wear bronzer," and being one of those sort of orange patriarchs,
right?
Who it turns out that he does that so he shows up in mirrors.
Right. That was. That's one of my that's really fun because that's I think possibly my favorite that's my candidate for the Whale Award, in that because it's they're like, well, clearly it must be Coach Bakula because the boat in which Lucia gets turned into a vampire, the Persephone, right. And for your Dracula reference, gets it turns out it's registered to Coach Bakula, so obviously they're going to go in, but no, he appears in the mirror, so clearly and then you're like, okay, so then who is the other vampire?
Right. And to the locked forbidden basement into which nobody is allowed to go turns out to be a grow lab, because
right.
he also grows weed and sells it on the side.
Right. And so
which also explains his the fact that he talks like Count Dracula, because he connects ideas and goes high and has weird register changes, but okay, if he's high, sure.
Right. And and the and that's fun because the book sets you up from the beginning to be like, oh, this guy's a predator. You see him creeping on Mindy, and then there's there was already an expose book about about how he controls this town and by being an extremely successful football coach, and and how he's had in his previous town he'd had sex with some of the teenage girls, and so the football team stages this mass book burning. So you're like, okay, this guy's the predator, and so it's a fun sort of reverse fake out.
Yes. Because you also have the creepy town sheriff to Luke Hard again to blame it on,
right,
before he gets eaten in a very satisfying way. No, it's really fun.
It's really fun. The scene. I did very much enjoy the scene where they're like, he's a vampire, to the city council or whatever, and the mayor's like, dude, we told you, the deal involves you not being super blatant about it.
Yeah, no, that I had clocked.
Right, exactly.
I knew that as soon as it turns out that it was him, that the entire town is.
Yes.
Or all the town fathers are aware of this, because that's what we're doing here.
Right.
This is the coach, what's his face, Coach Sandusky, or was that the name of the town?
No, it's Coach. It was Sandusky.
Who everybody knew he was diddling kids, and nobody did anything about it because he won football games.
Right.
Except in a small town which was even more insular instead of a college. As always, it's not who has the power, it's what the power does to the people who have it.
Right, exactly. And so, but well, I think that this book does actually do a good job with because most, a lot of the time, vampirism is a metaphor for sexual predation, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And, this book does a good job of exploring that in, how does that actually play out in a small town? And it plays out that the vampire both does get to go around sucking blood and everybody knows it and looks the other way, and also gets to creep on the teenage girls, because why not? If you can get away with one thing, you can get away with basically anything.
Like, the very first thing that we hear him say is something that is extremely inappropriate for an authority figure to say to one of his students.
It's when she says, how do you know that a boy likes you? And he hands her a test paper with an A and says he gives you good grades.
Yeah, it's which is like any person who had been raised on the internet would immediately run out of the room and
right.
call an authority figure, at that point.
Well, but sort of, except
figure.
What
he's
authority
the one who
figure
runs the town.
Yeah.
Right. But she that completely passes by because he's sort of engineered her to be okay with this kind of stuff over the years. Although you did say at the beginning that she has a crush on him, which I don't think she actually does. I think she just likes him.
That's true.
I think she just thinks he's a good guy.
So
I think she is in fact a lesbian.
Well, the thing is that I think she's in fact a lesbian, but she's sort of questioning it, and part of that is, she's got there is a guy who she has some complicated feelings towards, and it's her English teacher. And part of the process of figuring out that she's lesbian is figuring out that this crush is not something that she wants to result in a relationship or sex.
True, but she's not I don't even think she figures that out. I don't think the book even dangles that possibility, really. I think that she's
the thing is that she's doing the thing though where this is a real thing where she likes getting the compliments. She likes that her favorite teacher likes her. And and he's her favorite teacher. She really likes him. She wants to spend time with him. She wants him to flirt with her, even, because it's a sign that he likes her.
Right. She doesn't construe that as a crush, though. Although admittedly she doesn't construe what she feels about Lucia as a crush initially either.
Right.
But you're right that it's entirely reasonable for him to construe it as a crush. First of all, because that's what he's trying to engineer,
right.
And he's trying to bring her into sexual maturity and directly into his, embrace. No, that is, that's just an aside. But he's a really well drawn character. He can, making actual literal, Vlad Dracula, a football coach, and finding a way to make his vocal register and the way that he talks work for both those characters is, I think, probably the most skillful and cool thing that this book does.
Yeah. And so the whole, which it makes it actually work. I like that the book, sort of is ambiguous about, is he actual literal Dracula, and she really is the reincarnation of Mina from Dracula, or is he just a crazy vampire and he keeps picking random teenage girls who he's decided are the reincarnation of Mina and going after them?
Or is he the real Dracula, but also he's crazy and
right, exactly,
random,
and the book sort of
and reincarnation isn't real,
right, exactly, and the book comes down on it doesn't matter, we're going to kill him.
Right, which is the correct answer.
Right, exactly.
They don't spend any time thinking about it, but if we spend time thinking about it, we get to, we are one potential way of reading this is we're breaking a centuries-long cycle using what? Queer desire as the revolutionary force.
Yes.
So that absolutely works. I'd like to talk about some weird little bits in the book that I really liked.
Absolutely.
I don't know why. First of all, am I right in thinking that he's the only like black character who gets shouted out as black, but the the school counselor who gets one scene is useless and is a Scientologist for some reason? Um, I have no
Yes.
idea what that was about or why that was in the book, but I thought it was really
Well, I mean,
funny
the useless
regardless.
school counselor is, part of this is about establishing that there really are no authority figures she can go to.
Yes.
I have no idea why he's a
I,
Scientologist.
I have no idea why it's Scientologist, particularly because Scientologists famously don't think that counselors are a thing.
Maybe that's the
And
joke.
maybe that is the joke, but that was a weird little joke. I I don't I'm not entirely sure what that one was about besides what you were saying, but there are other things where I both really liked it, and also I do know what that was about. The fact that Mindy's parents are like incredibly woke, and that whole scene, after they catch their teenage daughter being like with another girl naked and the other girl is still wearing her big black dildo.
That's right.
And the way that they react to this is just so like they're they're so like they're cartoonishly good parents, which is not at all what I was expecting.
No,
in this book.
and it's not at all
And
what
like,
what Mindy was expecting either. Because,
right,
and this is again part of what I mean by the movie. The book is changing movie genres, because when it's a lesbian coming of age in a small town movie, then of course, her parents are ex-hippies, so maybe they'd be okay with it, but they probably wouldn't. They'd really seem, they'd prefer she have gay friends to actually being gay, which is a great little encapsulation of a lot of woke parents.
right,
And they become cartoonishly supportive when this is a teen like action comedy.
right, right. When it sort of flips over uh, into being a sort of a science fiction horror in which we do need the return to motherhood moment to be like, actually, this is the moment, the limit on the revolution. Family actually can be good, and here's an example of that.
Right.
But I thought that the actual scene was also like, we love the good parent to the teenager who is like unbelievably embarrassing while being good.
Mm-hmm.
We love the annoying but still good parent, like Firm Translation State. I feel like that there was a definite like, it's completely unspoken, but it's like, okay, we can't. I The dad is definitely thinking like, I can't disapprove of this because it's gay and that will make me a homophobic parent.
Right.
But if she was dating the scumbag, teenage son of the alcoholic, like broken home next door, then
Right.
how I would, I would be reacting very differently right now. But I can't do that because that's not, good people behavior. So
Yes. And of course, part of why her parents are able to react so cartoonishly well is that they've already walked in on them before when they weren't having sex, but were
right.
clearly.
They were prepared for this on some level,
Yes.
and I'm sure that the mother was bursting in precisely to get this read, but was perhaps not entirely
Right, exactly.
prepared for the degree.
Yes, exactly.
Which was again a very good moment. As you said, the scene in the cruise ship, like,
Yeah.
deeply good, affecting horror. It's absolutely a rape.
Yeah.
But it's not prurient. It manages. This book has a lot of like very explicit sex in it, but it really manages to have really good sex and really horrifying, awful sex, and really delineate the line between the two. And,
Yeah.
But then to explore the ways in which these things affect each other when Lucy is too like exhausted to not hurt Mindy while she's drinking her blood. I liked the way that they handled sex pretty much all through the book.
Yeah, well, I feel like this is another example of the things that are out and out, where the romance books that we read. This is our second vampire, horror romance. And while it is very different, a thing that
Very different.
the thing that they have in common is that I think that they both handle sex and different kinds of sex and rape quite well.
I was going to say, like, the bit where Lucia goes out in the sun, right after she has initially been turned.
Yeah.
Really, that whole sequence is so good. Like the enoki mushrooms that sort of pop up, wherever her footprints were, because she's in this sort of like, she's the opposite of like a life goddess,
Right.
Like decay is popping up in her footprints, but then she goes into the sun to sort of purify herself because she's trying to commit suicide. But like her reaction to that is, but the way that she phrases it is like, there are some things that come out of, and this is another thing that I really appreciate about the way Lucia's character is that like, she's like 90% of the stuff that comes out of her mouth is dumb as hell, but like occasionally she says things that are like really weirdly deep and they like catch you off the side. And one of them is like, she basically states the main premise of Utena before she steps out into the sun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Utena's not uncamp. She says like, there's no way to win by playing in this system.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave the stage, which is like, oh, that's one of my big central tenets right there. And it's just been passed off in this vampire book, like sort of right before she goes and tries to kill herself.
Well, and that's also one of the moments where she thinks she's alone. So
yes.
that, most of the time when she's saying something that's not dumb as hell, it's when she either thinks she's alone or circumstances have otherwise forced her to be genuinely vulnerable.
Yeah, you're right. She has no political awareness as far as I can see, but at some point she drops like, oh, the apocalypse has already happened and it was the baby boomers.
Right.
Just such a bizarre, where did you get that take from? Yeah, there's a bunch of little examples of like, really trenchant observations, and times when the sense of place becomes really acute. When they're out in the country, actually, like the sense of place becomes really acute. Like whenever they're out, driving or going to the bridges with bats underneath them, because we're near Austin, and it's bat country. It's like everything suddenly seems like, because everything in the town is false, right?
Right.
And
I did wonder, how much does Texas have deep forest?
Texas has like every biome imaginable.
Okay.
It depends. It really depends on where you are. It's like, it's really slapped together.
Uh-huh.
Texas is, but probably not quite as much as appears in this book. But I don't know.
Because I kept forgetting.
The author is from Mississippi,
right? And that's the thing I kept forgetting that the book was set in Texas and thinking it was set in like Alabama or Mississippi, because it feels like that biome. But maybe it is the part of maybe it is the part of Texas that's not all desert.
I mean, this is just me based on, I've only been to Texas like twice, I think, but like, and it was actually in the Austin area. And if you just drive out, and it's not, I didn't see like forest like this, but if you drive out of Austin, you pass through like, in any direction, you pass through like 5 different sort of entire like microclimates. Mm-hmm. So, I can't say. There's a lot of things in this book that are not, if you want to poke holes in this book, there are a lot of things that are like, there's no way a person who's a teenager in 2016 is going to say, is it live or is it Memorex?
Right.
That Memorex is from before you were born.
Right.
But but as I was saying, it's like the town is so slippery, like, there's this mall in 2016 in this small town, and it's got thrift stores inside it, and it's got thrift stores with like couture clothes inside it. Right,
in this small town in the middle of nowhere.
Right. The small town is, and like the barrage of like brands and pop culture references that the author hits you with are all very centered around this town, which itself is named after a brand, and the stadium, of course, the small town is a stadium because it's Texas, and high school football gets its own stadium, but the stadium is going to be named after like the coach, uh, and so, there's this hail of bullshit that's in that space, but whenever they get outside it, things get a lot more grounded and feel a lot more real.
Yeah.
And you can sort of feel the humidity of the sort of the southern weather.
Yeah, no, it's when they're driving, when she's doing her pizza delivery runs, that, felt that I have very clear sense memories of and imagery of that.
Yeah. Very much so.
So what do we think about somebody who's definitely going to be a strong contender for Token Good Man in next poor Seb Chan.
Poor Seb.
Seb Chan 7 on Tumblr.
I was like, you're getting fridged, my boy.
I know.
And he got
and
fridged.
Boy, did he get fridged.
I was like, yes, I see what you did there.
Right.
This is the token good man in this gender swapped teen movie, and he's going to die first, and he did. And wow, spectacularly.
Yeah.
Also. I think that when I said John Hughes, he's the character that gives me the most John Hughes vibes.
Yeah.
It's like he's the comedy, he's Asian, whatever the fuck his name was.
He's
from
Romanian.
16
Yeah.
Long Duck Dong.
Oh yes, but except that in this case he is Romanian.
Except
he
that
has
because
to be Romanian.
You actually couldn't get away with that.
Yes.
Now, but
which is a good
Eastern
thing.
Europeans are fair game. This is 2016 is Borat time.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. No, and he really is.
And obviously
kind of
he's Transylvanian also. But.
Yeah, and he really is kind of a riff on Borat, except nicer. And of course he has to be Romanian because he has to recognize the vampire.
Yes, the vampire. Yes, but he also speaks the kind of comedy broken English that no real human being ever speaks.
Right, like I actually went to high school with a Romanian exchange student, and he did not talk anything like that.
Yeah, no, he's the teen comedy guy.
Yeah.
And I do not feel great about him.
No, me neither.
I really don't.
But boy, he really is like the token good guy. How he even he has a crush on Mindy, but he totally takes no for an answer and is still like, but let me know if you want to go to the movies as friends because it'll be cheaper that way, and is totally willing to be her sort of emotional support as she's figuring out her relationship with her vampire girlfriend and be their fellow paranormal investigator.
He's they don't deserve him.
No, they don't. But also, he really is every female character who got completely shafted in all these. I know, yes. And that's why I paused to decide whether or not I was going for it.
Seb got shafted. Seb got boned. Seb got screwed. Seb got owned. Seb got penetrated with a big stick and left out for all to see.
And but he really is every female character who got okay. And
yeah, no, and yes, and you can take that any of the various metaphorical weights that impaling somebody might have, you can do for him.
Right.
And and I was like, yeah, no, I see what you're doing here. That's fine. I think that this has a lot of the same, like, it's this story but gender swapped, or it's this story but with lesbians, and we're going to hit the problematic beats of those stories as well.
Yeah.
Because we like those still. And I'm like, okay. I mean, you've signaled, at least with this one, like, you've signaled to me from the top that we're going trashy, tasteless.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, you can have your ethnic stereotype and you can kill him. I'm glad you didn't make him the black friend or, worse.
Yeah, I mean, the real takeaway of Seb is that A, he deserved better, but B, you know, he was if you're going to go that route, he's the least awful possibility.
Yes. I'm from Eastern European descent, everybody, just in case that hasn't been mentioned here. But anyway, uh, uh, this another another thing that I like is, like, you know, obviously this is me versus other girls slash, you know, the nerd and the prom queen. But the way that, like, Mindy doesn't really read as a nerd, um, except that she except that she wears horn-rimmed
Well,
glasses.
and also
And,
that she's on Tumblr and plays a lot of Tomb Raider and gets straight A's.
yeah, you know, playing a lot of Tomb Raider is classic nerd lesbian behavior. um, but I think my favorite way that the book decides to demonstrate that she is the nerd is that when she's like reading by herself at lunch, as one does when one is the nerd, and Lucy is there, Mindy starts like fondling her book in an almost erotic fashion.
Right.
You know, it's like Nerdy loves her bookie book. She really loves her bookie book. And, you know, when she comes home after that, all fluttered, she like clasps it to her chest, you know, as she lies back on her bed. And it's like, I see. Yes, you may be sublimating your sexual agency through your nerdiness,
Yes.
as many people have and many people will.
And you know, Mindy just spends the entire book being extremely horny, like
Yes.
significantly
I mean,
hornier
God,
than the.
she comes like a fucking, you know, just snaps your fingers. It's very impressive. How on earth was I planning to complete that simile? Comes like a what, Isaac?
But you know, she's right. But you know, she's significantly hornier than the hot cheerleader, who, you know, first dates the quarterback, yes, and then becomes her girlfriend.
Well, yes, the hot cheerleader has been using sex as a means to an end.
Exactly.
And has had a lot of really inspiring sexual experiences with teenage boys, as sexual experiences with teenage boys tend to be, I imagine. But yes, so, and also is probably at least a bit is probably more gay than she is letting on, yes, even though she is textually bi.
So a thing that I enjoyed, that just a very small silly thing, is during the whole mall makeover scene, part of it is just sort of a rundown on all of the things that people were really strident on the internet about, that, you know, about your appearance. So, like, your dress shape and exactly how you're supposed to be sized for a bra and how important bra sizing is. And this is how you should be washing curly hair. And,
right,
you know,
it felt like the sort of instructional sex bits in the Boat Lesbians book. It's like, we're going to run down all of the things that healthy sex, you know, is, which is in this book the job of her, you know, hippie parents.
Yes,
but in this, but no, just in case you didn't.
But this is just, but you know, this is just all the like, this is all the stuff that I feel like was in the aughts, all this, you know, new instructions for being a woman.
Yeah, a thing that, like, I'm not even sure I want to mention, because the fact that I know about it is maybe more than I want to reveal. But the fact that she gets her vampire bite in where you would get a womb tattoo in the womb tattoo genre of hentai,
a what?
Has to be okay. See, this is
this is like when you had to explain what a sigma male was to me.
Precious moments with my best friend. Who else will tell them these things? Yeah, yes. Although this one, I feel like it's entirely reasonable that you haven't encountered this. But no, it's having a tattoo right on your womb that sort of makes you mystically horny is a hentai trope.
Oh, okay.
And this book, I think, is nodding to that by making her bite mark right at that zone. And being a vampire does in fact make her significantly hornier, if maybe not as horny as Mindy is.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'll figure out how much of that I want to leave.
I think you should leave it in.
All right, I'll leave it in.
It is possible. You can still maintain plausible deniability here. Like one just simply by being on Tumblr, one will be exposed to a variety of fetishes.
This is true. This is absolutely true. The final thing that I want to mention is the ending, where and it's like I respect a roaring rampage of revenge.
Yes, me too.
I think that it is entirely fine to, at least in our fiction, to imagine murdering every single member of the city council who is complicit in this dude going around raping children essentially.
Yeah.
And I think particularly the way that we get the high school principal, who in the first time we encounter her outside of school, Mindy describes as the kind of woman who, basically sucks, but you don't really have a reason to be mad at her, so you just have to sort of tolerate it. And then it's like when they do have a reason to be mad at her, it's like, all right, we're going to do the thing that the thing that breaks all of the rules. We're going to give the vampire a gun. See how you like it.
Right.
So yeah, I really liked that. I liked the ending, and I liked the fact that they sort of just were like, well, we're going to need some blood. I know some people who have some blood in them.
And then eventually they're going to make Mindy a vampire.
Yes.
Because otherwise they can't really have their happy ending, because otherwise their happy ending is overshadowed by the fact that Mindy will age and die.
Exactly. It's the classic lesbian vampire quandary. Really any sexuality vampire quandary, but I've seen it come up more in lesbian vampire circles.
That might just be because you've read more lesbian vampire novels than other vampire novels of late.
You know what? I think it's because I made it a plot point in that Homestuck fanfiction I wrote about Kanaya and Rose. Let's edit all of that out instead.
I don't know. Maybe you should leave it in.
This has been a very embarrassing episode of the podcast for me, all told.
Well, what is the point of reconnecting with one's teenage self if not to feel overwhelming waves of embarrassment?
How could this happen to me? I've made some mistakes. This episode started off so well. I pretended I was too good for erotic vampire fiction, and now everyone knows what kind of... Anyway. Is there a problem?
Did you bring up the word tattoo on air?
Yes, I did. There's a lot of cringe in this book.
Yes.
And to make this work, we're putting a lot of cringe in this podcast for your enjoyment, and I hope that you, our viewership, have appreciated that.
But I feel like this book really is the sort of embrace the cringe, kill the part of you that cringes, ethos played out, and it honestly it works. I would much rather read a bunch of bizarre cringe, tonal whiplash, small press books than a lot of the stuff that does not even make it to into the lineup, because it is so boring, that is coming, that has been carefully edited and polished and perfectly competent prose, and it's just
this is why there. I feel like I need to nudge you to read some of the erotica that the author of The Wicked and the Willing recommended to us.
Yes, we absolutely should.
Because I feel like I'll dig around for some of that. I'm going to edit out the fact that I pirate these books, definitely.
Do.
But I'll send you some of those to try to make that a thing to do.
That sounds like a good idea. But yeah, I mean, in general, I feel like this podcast, all the reading I've done for this podcast has really driven home to me how important small presses are, and they are vanishing. I think Ylva, the press that did this one, is I think ebook only, which is how they're able to survive. And
Amazon will sell you a paperback of this one.
Oh, okay. Never mind then. But, like print on demand has made them a lot more viable than they used to be. But as has ebooks, because you get a much better margin on them. But still, they are getting eaten. So please, guys, support your small presses. They keep the reading pool interesting.
Very much so. So thank you to shout out to Aster who recommended this book,
yes.
and to also the Tumblr Anon who also recommended this book. 2 recommendations is what gets things to the top of the queue these days.
Yeah, and it's really funny because one of the things that hadn't bumped it up in the queue was the title. I thought that this was going to be some sort of very like horror movie pastiche of just like one very specific, like the stuff that's what is her name? Theodora Goss, who did the like Daughters and Sisters or whatever of all of the horror movie monsters. I thought that this was going to be something that was trying to be a lot more elevated. And when I saw the cover, I realized that that was what got me to decide to read it this Shabbos right away. So
good. But anyway, next time, unless Isaac decides that he can't, we're going to be doing Inkblood Sister Scribe.
Oh yeah, which you may decide that you can't.
Planetfall. It's going to be Planetfall. And if who knows if not that, but we have plenty of things to choose from. Thank you again, everybody, for sending all of these recommendations.
Yes,
they keep the podcast going.
They absolutely do. Thank you, guys.
But until then.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye. God exists in this universe. But if you love yourself, you can remain in his light, even if you're a vampire. Which is a surprisingly complicated moral for a book which includes the scene with the strap-on.